my pastor in the Episcopal Church, Father Wright. Would you stand, please, Father Wright? He was my pastor, and he performed the marriage ceremony that united my wife and I 41 years ago. Well, I hope I haven't missed anybody, but if I have, forgive me. I'm getting a little older and I forget. Let's get down to business. A nation is no greater than its service to the weak and the poor and the disadvantaged of that nation.
Yes, sir.
I will say that again.
Yes, sir.
A nation is no greater than its service to the weak, the poor, and the disadvantaged of that nation. If we believe in the scriptures, in this instance particularly of the Bible and the New Testament, Jesus lays out a yardstick that will be the determining criterion of judgment of God or by God of the nations in the last days. In this criterion that Jesus lays out, certainly in a country that professes to be a Christian country based on a Judeo-Christian ethic, this criterion should be held high as the measuring stick to help us to see how far off the country is and what danger the country is in by its measure of its distance from the criterion.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the criterion laid down by the Master himself, who will be judging? Now, I didn't say his honor will be judging.
Come on.
Because the scripture doesn't say that any of you that sit on benches wearing black robes will be the judge of nations and kingdoms and people. It says God is going to turn judgment over into the hands of his Christ.
Yes, sir.
So the judge has laid down the standard of judgment. And he said, and I quote,
Come on.
that in that day, what day? The day of judgment. The day when the criterion will be used as a measure of men and nations. God is going to separate the wheat from the tare, the sheep from the goat, based on this criterion. What is the criterion? One of the disciples asked the Master when he gave them the criterion that you should minister unto the sick, the imprisoned, those out of doors, They said, Master, when were you sick and in prison, and we ministered not unto you? When were you homeless or out of doors, and we gave you not shelter? Master, when were you without, and we did not for you? And the master said, inasmuch as you have not done this to the least of these, my brethren, you have not done it also unto me. So the master laid down a criterion in the American society. We have millions today who are homeless. We have many more millions who are sick and imprisoned and impoverished and weak. And it appears as though the conservative element of the country is moving away from care for the poor and the weak and the helpless and the children, and catering to the wants of those that have, when it is the poor and the weak who built the country, when it is the poor and the weak who have fought, bled, and died to maintain America as a great nation. Now America is turning her back on the weak and blaming the condition of the country on the poor, on the black, on the Hispanic. That's right. When in reality, the mismanagement of the wealth and people of this country is the fault of those who are at the top, who have held power, who have manipulated the masses of the people against the good of America and the good of the world. How will America answer to Christ? With human beings sleeping under bridges, and you are spending over $500 billion to bail out the savings and loan industry, but won't spend money to bail out those veterans who fought, bled, and died, who are sleeping under bridges, who have fallen on hard times, whose homes and cars have been repossessed, people taking advantage of them in their weakness to enrich the few. Well, this past 10 days, the nation has been traumatized because of a vicious act of terrorism in the bombing of a federal building in Oklahoma. All of us in this room, no doubt, sat glued to the television, watching bloodied human beings carried from that wreckage, and the bodies of many more blown into so many pieces that they are all but unrecognizable. And this nation sits and looks at this and wondered, what is America coming to. Cities filled with crime and violence. People can't walk the streets in safety. The elderly of the nation preyed upon by wicked, unscrupulous people, robbing them sometimes of their life savings and of their little social security checks. The young of the nation abused, murdered, drowned in hot water, even put in ovens by parents. The stress of life in America is such that they can't handle the crying of children. So babies are coming to hospitals, dying of trauma, shock, their heads bashed, thrown against walls, thrown out of windows by parents who have had enough. Young girls in a sex-mad society, their sexual nature titillated by sick television programming, sick movies, sick videotapes, sick songs from a sick, decadent culture that is using the talents of gifted people to spread degenerate life in the name of music and art. Babies, sexual nature titillated. Mothers not home because they have to work. Daughters left to be savaged by brutal men, sometimes their own fathers and uncles, cousins and brothers. And we ask, what is the world coming to? America, the beautiful, is becoming America, the ugly. They say love her or leave her. We have no place to go. Some of us will say, well, we'll run to Africa. Africa is suffering too. We'll run to Europe. You better be careful. We'll run to South America. We'll run to Mexico. There is no hiding place today. The judgment of God has touched every nation in every corner of the globe. There is no hiding place. This is a beautiful country, but the human beings within it are being turned into something that God himself is angry and sick of. To make God angry is to incur his wrath. John the Revelator said, and the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. It is the time of the dead that they should be judged and given justice. Everywhere you look, people are angry. You get on the subway, you look in their faces, you don't see peace. You drive your car, you can hardly find humanitarian gestures. People will kill you over a parking space. Kill you over a place in line in the bank or in the supermarket. Arguments breaking out in the homes. Now the schools are battlegrounds. There is no peace anywhere to be found. And the nations were angry. And thy wrath is come. Not only are the nations angry, but God is angry. He's angry at what he's looking at. Debauchery, filth, paraded as morality. And if you speak against it, you are considered something ugly. If a pastor speaks against homosexuality, he's called homophobic. If he speaks against lesbianism, he's not up to speed. He's living in old times. If we take a moral stand against adultery or fornication, we're out of touch with reality. If we criticize our government for its corruption, we're called un-American. If we criticize the behavior of white people in their injustice toward blacks, and if we as black people want to come together and find some solace and peace among ourselves, then we are called racists in reverse. So we better not even tell the truth. Because if you speak the truth, somebody's going to get hurt. But truth is your best friend. Because truth will give us a mirror to allow us to see ourselves and how far off we are from the standard of God. Somebody has to tell the truth. Somebody has to be willing to pay the price of the truth. Truth is more important than our little positions. Truth is more important than being a mayor or a police chief or a senator or a cardinal or a pope or an imam or a mufti or a president of the United States. Truth is bigger than us all. The Holy Quran teaches us that Allah created the heavens and the earth with truth. This universe is sustained with truth. There is no position of power that can be sustained over any long period of time based on falsehood and injustice. What did we see in Oklahoma? What was it and what is it that has us mesmerized for the last 10 days? It's a wake-up call. White folk have always thought that it was you they had to watch out for. White folk have always feared black unity, as though our unity would mean that we would do to them what they and their fathers have done and continue to do to us. How much they misread black people. They don't mind us having some guns as long as we shoot one another. But they only give you enough to get you in trouble with yourself. But the dissatisfaction in America is so great. I have warned by the grace of God in the past that her trouble would not come from us, but her trouble would come from her own dissatisfied whites of this nation who are fed up with the government and the government's misrepresentation of the Constitution and of what the founding fathers of this nation set in motion. Now, Wolf Blitzer of CNN and a white pastor, were talking, and when something like this happens and it's on the news for hours and hours, people are not as careful with what they say. And things come out. And Wolf Blitzer said, in words, it wouldn't have been, I could have taken it better, he said. If it had been an Arab or one of the earlier groups mentioned, which happened to have been the Nation of Islam. Why could you take it better? Here was a Christian pastor who said the same thing. We could have taken it better if it were one of those Arab Muslim terrorists, fanatics. We could deal with that. And before they knew who it was, they blasted the Nation of Islam. Did it. Somebody called in and took credit for it and said he was a member of the Nation of Islam. And that went all over the world. Then some eyewitness said it was 2 or 3 Arab-looking individuals. You do not know how many Arab Muslims and American Muslims suffered as a result of those careless words that was spoken by the media.
That's right, dear minister.
People walked up to sisters in their long garments and accosted them. This is the unwritten thing. Many Muslims have been terrorized as a result of the media's distortion, hatred of Muslims. Why could you take it better? Because we already believe that Muslims and Arabs are terrorists and violent people. We have never been made to look at ourselves as monsters. So it's easier for us to take it if it's somebody named Mahmoud or Kareem or Hassan or Abdullah, but not McVeigh. Can you imagine what the papers would have said had it been somebody named Abdullah? Now, he's a war hero. Something went wrong.
That's right.
We don't hear the monster talk. They cool that out.
That's right. Go ahead.
There's no apology to the Nation of Islam, to American Muslims, or to Arabs for the way they were handled. Islam is not a terrorist religion. Islam is that code of law and conduct that leads to the making of peace. Islam is not a religion of violence. Islam is a religion of peace. The very name Islam means submission entirely to do the will of God, who is the author of peace. The very greeting word of the Muslim, Assalamu alaikum, is the greeting word of peace. And when we say peace, it means that from our lips and from our hands, you are free from evil or harm, for we are offering you peace. Jesus never met his disciples or left his disciples without saying, peace be with you. Peace is the way of the righteous. But that should not be taken to mean that we are believers in some milquetoast doctrine that makes us easily subjected to evil and we say nothing or do nothing. The Quran, which is the book of guidance for Muslims, says, fight with those who fight with you, but never be the aggressor. Never be the aggressor.
Go ahead.
We fight only in defense of ourselves, our lives, our families, our children, our property. But we are commanded by God never to be the aggressor, for Allah hates aggression. Well then, how could you, in the name of Islam, slaughter innocent people?
Go ahead.
What kind of religion are you practicing that you could even plan to bomb the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, when innocent people are driving through such tunnels? What do you hope to accomplish by such evil planning? Can you imagine? The president wants to give the FBI powers that they've already taken. They have infiltrated all of our group.
That's right.
Now they're going to make it legal. Okay. Terrorism is an act of desperation by men and women who refuse to believe that any avenue for the redress of their grievance will be listened to. Consequently, they feel they must take the matter of justice into their own hands. When a people are deprived of justice, their minds become imbalanced. That's why justice is represented by a female holding a scale with a blindfold on her eyes, that she is not to see who you are, your station in life, what your color, culture, national origin is, how much money you have or you don't have, how much education you have or you don't have, how connected you are or unconnected. Justice should be blind to just the scale. The weight of facts in one hand and the weight of action in accord with facts on the other, giving balance. And when you live in a world that's very root is unjust, it's only a matter of time before the injustice carried on by those in high places reaches down to infants, and the scale becomes so imbalanced that the people lose ability to see correctly, hear correctly, perceive correctly, and that imbalance is referred to as insanity. Sanity and sanitary deals with cleanliness, and that which is unclean is unsanitary. So unclean behavior, immoral, is unclean. Unclean is unsanitary. Unsanitary leads to dis-ease. And dis-ease, unsanitary, unclean, is the same as insane. Brother Farrakhan, are you saying that every insane person is unclean? Every person that is insane is possessed of an unclean spirit. And when your mind is imbalanced, you do things that are unclean. You will defecate on yourself. You will urinate on yourself. You don't think you're doing anything wrong.
That's right.
You'll do unsocial things, unclean things. You don't think you're doing anything wrong because in your own mind, you're all right. Because you have lost the standard by which decency and sanity and cleanliness is measured. So when you lose that balance, you are put away till you can retrieve balance and respect order by bringing your conduct in line with an approved standard of behavior. A Muslim could not be a terrorist because no Muslim is so hopeless that he denies Allah's sufficiency.
That's right.
That he has to kill and maim and brutalize innocent people to make a sad, silly point. And so the nations are angry. Everywhere we look on the earth, the nations are at each other. And God is angry because the standard by which he judges us has been obliterated. And some other standard is put in the place of God's standard of judgment. And so all of us now are in danger. An insane world coming apart. But why Oklahoma? It's a beautiful land if you've driven through Oklahoma, as some of us have been blessed to do. It's mid-America, it's the Bible Belt. Now, I'm not making mockery, but Oklahoma has always given us a sign of something, things to come. The Trail of Tears, the forced march of thousands of Native Americans, starting on the east coast of America, ended in Oklahoma. Thousands of Native Americans died in that forced march. And those that ended up in Oklahoma were the strongest of the strong. And they were put on reservations, as you know, in Oklahoma. And many of us who are the descendants of slaves, when so-called freedom or emancipation came, we in Oklahoma mixed with the Native Americans. Most Oklahomans have some Native American blood in them because the mixture between the black and the red went on.
Go ahead, brother.
The red had land,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
and on that land was found oil.
Tell us, brother.
And the blacks were getting education. And the black and the red formed a kind of union.
Go ahead.
And the knowledge and zeal in the blacks and the wealth from the land of the red came together in Oklahoma
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
to produce the greatest economic development ever in the history of black America. In the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma, blacks, Indians, and a few Jews
Yes, sir.
built what was called the Black Wall Street of America. A 39 square block area with over 600 businesses. Black millionaires.
Yes, sir.
Oil companies. You name it, we had it. In Oklahoma. The Chicago Tribune had as its headline, after the bombing in Oklahoma, the worst bombing in 75 years. I picked up the paper. I tried to read, well, if this is the worst in 75 years, what was it 75 years ago? Unfortunately, the article never mentioned that. And so I was at a loss. But I found a book. It's called Black Wall Street. By J.J. Wilson and Ron Wallace. What happened 75 years ago, black folk and Native Americans had become powerful in Oklahoma. And the Klan at that time, and the white folks in Oklahoma at that time, haters of blacks, haters of Jews, haters of Native Americans, they didn't like that union. There were a lot of racial tension, and whether you know it or not, the first time bombs ever fell in America, on any American city, they fell on Tulsa, Oklahoma, in June of 1921, when white folk commanded all those little planes that they dust the crops with, and they filled them with gasoline, Molotov cocktails, you would call it. The blacks and the whites were rioting. The blacks were armed, and they were shooting whites, and whites were shooting them, and blood was flowing. Blacks, it appears from the historical account, were winning until they got those planes, all that they could get together, and filled them with these Molotov cocktails and flew over the black part of town and dropped bombs and leveled 39 square blocks to the ground. They set up machine guns on the hill, and they killed men, women, and children. And when the whites marched into North Tulsa, blacks fleeing, trying to break through so that an escape route could be made so that the women and children and the elderly could get out. The white historical accounts say less than 100. Other historical accounts say 300. But this book, these researchers talk to some of the elders who have survived and are alive today. And they said thousands. How come you don't know about it? How come? How come? How come? How come you know about everybody else's Holocaust? But those who know your suffering in mind, that you had a thriving economic development in 1921 that was bombed to the ground, and in 1995 you are $400 billion a year and the #1 beggar with no economic development. When you are robbed of your history of what you once did, then you don't know your possibility of what you are able to do in a modern time. So Oklahoma in 1921 crushed that movement of blacks for economic independence. And right after that, the Trail of Tears, the destruction of the blacks in Tulsa and their economic development, the Dust Bowl, and the rebuilding of Oklahoma, and now this tragedy. And as they talked to the militia, the white militia, on television, one of the leaders said, if it's war you want, come on. And we got over 100,000. If it's war you want, come on. This is what white folk are saying to white folk. Is that in the Bible? Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
It's there. It said because they delighted in killing. God said, I will give you your own blood to drink. And you will be drunk with your own blood as with sweet wine.
Yes,
so here now, America is becoming a boiling cauldron of gross dissatisfaction. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said 30% dissatisfied could lead to a change that affects 75% of the world. But when you get 100% dissatisfaction, it leads to 100% total change. And what you have all over the earth is total dissatisfaction. And this is why Jesus said there would be wars and rumors of wars, and kingdom would rise against kingdom and nation against nation. And these are just the beginning of sorrow. There would be famine, pestilence, and earthquake in diverse places. Is not that what you're seeing?
Yes, sir.
The book says you will see signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, the sea, and the waves roaring. The nations with perplexity, and men's hearts failing them with fear for what they see coming upon the earth. The sun is upset. She has spots on her, and she's belching out fire from her surface from 10 to 30,000 miles, affecting the electricity. The moon is upset. The stars are raging. God is troubling the universe to let you on earth know a change is coming. Whether you like it or not, the old world is going to pass away and something new and better is going to be established. When people are angry with each other, there should always be a means by which conflict is resolved with justice. That ensures peace. This is why the Constitution allows people due process. You can take your grievance to a court. And if you don't like the decision, you can appeal it. All the way up through state court to federal court to the Supreme Court. But when the Supreme Court hands down its decision, there's no higher authority then but God. That's a wonderful system, if it works.
Yes, sir.
Now wait. I want to show you how each one of you is important in the makeup of a society. And you may think that your little action in your little sphere of activity is unnoticed, wrong. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to me, justice is a law that distinguishes between right and wrong. It goes to sleep with you. It wakes up with you. Whether you are knowledgeable of that law or not, it is alive and working. Either with you, for you, or against you, regardless to what the courts do. The law of justice, the balance that God set up in the universe, you can't escape it. The fool thinks in his heart, I have gotten away with my evil. What a fool you are indeed. So God says in the Bible and in the Quran, whatsoever is done in the dark God said, I'm going to bring it forth into the light. The Holy Quran says, though it be the weight of an atom hidden in a rock and the rock buried in the earth, he said, yet will I bring it forth. So heck, if there's no hiding place, you think because the police didn't see you, you got away. You think because you got a slick talking lawyer who beat the charge that you got away. Hell no. If God's justice depended on a jive court and an ignorant jury of your peers and smart, crooked, slick talking lawyers who can beat any damn case with a little bit of money, and you think you beat it, you're a fool. God's justice is with you, and you will pay, not just in this life. You're not just going to pay in this life, but you sentence your children to the effect of your own wickedness. Hear me. Those of you who think you get away, the Bible says, prepare slaughter for the children for the iniquities of their fathers. Prepare slaughter for the children. Hey, man. You think you're getting away? My little silly little brother, sister, you reefer smoking, coke using, crack sniffing, liquor drinking, freakish acting. You think you're getting away? Because there ain't no police around? The police is there. Not the city police. The police of the law of God. So you use crack, and the crack affects your brain. Not just your brain. It affects the head of the sperm. And it affects the egg. Think you're getting away? You're passing on your sins to your unborn generation. You're passing on your filth and your degeneracy to your babies, and they will be made to die for your craziness. Nobody gets away. The Holy Quran says you should be there to witness when death comes to the wicked. Some of you have watched people die, and you wonder what they're going through. They look like they're writhing in pain. The Quran says you should see when the angels get them. You see the angels lashing their backs and giving them boiling water to drink. Meaning that just as if you were drinking boiling water, what you would feel as that boiling water was going down inside. So as they're passing out of the world, they're writhing in deep pain. And the God sometimes holds them here till they want to die, but they can't die. Nobody gets away. They can get away from you, Chief. They can get away from me. They can get away from the short arm of that law, not the long arm, the short arm. But the long arm of God's justice, nobody escapes. The Bible says, as a man soweth, the same shall he also reap. Jesus said, you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Obadiah the prophet said, as thou hast done, so shall it be done unto you. Now, as you look at the sun, the moon, the stars, upset in the heavens, and on earth, perplexity of the nations. The nations are just confused. Look at them. I mean, they're happy, their contract with America. Our first 100 days, we're so happy. We had a contract with America, and all of our policies we have been able to get through in the first 100 days. But the poor are crying. The poor are hurting, and they can't hear it because they're deaf, they're dumb, and they're blind. They have eyes, but they can't see. They have ears, they can't hear. And so the country is heading down, and the president beefing up the FBI. We can spy more now. Well, we ain't got to worry about that one, because we know wherever 2 or 3 of us are gathered together, the FBI and Jesus is with us. The sea and the waves roaring. Men's hearts failing them with fear. That's the #1 killer in America today. Heart. What's wrong with your heart, man? I'm overweight. You sure are. It ain't just the fat around your heart. It's that fat around your head. No, I'm not trying to be funny. You see, the weight of sin is heavy. You know? See, sin carries a weight on the brain. That's why the prophet said the wages of sin is death. And you